everybody, welcome back to video number 9. This is our final video for the Sippin On Sunshine quilt. We're going to finish our quilt today. We're going to work on the filler blocks, the borders, assemble our quilt, and add the embellishments. We're going to start with the filler blocks. I've figured out how to fit them all into one hoop. I have a 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll show you how I'm going to manage the color changes as we go through when we quilt these blocks. I already have all the fabric set aside for the filler blocks. We did that at the beginning when we cut and sorted our fabric. As far as cutting batting for these, I have lots of pieces of scrap batting in my batting bag. I'll start by showing you how to load all of these into one hoop, and as it's stitching out, it's going to start with batting placement lines, and then I'm going to grab from my batting pile and see what fits. You go back to pages 5 and 6 at the beginning of your instructions. Find your filler blocks. For example, here's filler block 4, standard size 4.5 by 4.5. If you're doing one of these at a time, cut your batting 5.5 inches square. Let's talk next about the backing for our quilt. I'm working with the fabric kit, and I knew when I saw this fabric in the fabric kit that I wasn't going to want to use this on the back. It's really pretty. It's a nice big piece of fabric. I'm saving this for something else because nobody ever looks at the back of the quilt. I have a bolt of fabric, Kona Cotton Corn Yellow, this nice bright yellow. This is what I'm going to use for the back of the quilt. Our binding fabric is this nice floral print. I'll need to cut that into 2.5 inch strips, sew them together, and fold them in half and press them to make my binding. I'll show you that when we get to that step. We have fabric for the outer border. You can see I have not cut the border fabric. For the inner border in the fabric kit, you probably have this little letter. It says we have enough to make the inner border for our quilt. We're going to be doing block by block quilting. I'll follow these directions. I've got the fat quarter here. We're going to go ahead and start today with our filler blocks. I definitely want to use up my scrap batting. I'm going to load light mesh cutaway in my 9.5 by 14 inch hoop, and we'll head over to the machine. Let's go ahead and load our filler blocks. You might notice on the instructions I have some little symbols next to each of these. What I did was I went down the row and I looked for the same designs. This one is KDQ 527 Outdoor 6 2x4. That same design is down here. The little X is on there twice. That's the same design and size. And then these two in the middle are different and used only once. I'm going to start by adding those things which I'm using more than once. We'll go ahead and get to our quilting files. We're going to start with KDQ 527 Outdoor 6 2x4 horizontal. KDQ 527 Outdoor 6 2x4 horizontal. And you can see how this is for block 1 and block 6. This one here, I'm going to put it in the top corner, and I'm going to use that border duplicate key, and I'm going to add one over to the right. I'm going to go ahead and space that out a little bit. That's plenty of space, and we'll hit OK. The next one we need is KDQ 527 Outdoor 6 4x4. 4x4 horizontal. This is the one we want. I'm going to hit set, move that over, and I'm going to do the same thing, border duplicate key, add it to the right, space that out, and then we need to add these two in the middle. They're only used once. We need KDQ 526 Weather 6 2x4, and it's the 2x4 horizontal, this one here. Pull that down and out of the way, and let's add our last one, KDQ 526 Weather 6 4x4. Weather 6 4x4, and it's 4x4 horizontal. I'm going to save that to my machine, and I'm ready to go. The color linen on my machine, the first thing it's going to stitch out is the batting placement line for the top two designs that I dropped in. I have a rectangle of batting. I'm going to see if that'll cover both. That will cover both. The next thing that's going to stitch out is the batting tack down line. I'm going to add a piece of tape. We'll go ahead and tack these down. The tack down lines have stitched out. I need to trim away the extra batting that's outside both of these tack down lines. Next, I'm going to stitch out the fabric placement lines. This is block 1. It's the blue fabric with the fruit. Go ahead and lay that down. Make sure I cover that placement line. Looks good. And then this one right here is block 6. Lay that down. You can add a piece of tape if you want. I'll just use the tape I just had on the batting. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch the tack down. Now we're ready to do the background quilting, which is all you do for the filler blocks. Block 1 is quilted in linen. Block 6 will be quilted in clover. When this block is done quilting, I can stop my machine and change the thread. These 2 blocks are done. That's all you do for filler blocks. I'm going to go ahead and stitch out the rest off camera, and then we'll take this over to the table. We'll walk through the trimming sizes for all of these. Here's all of my filler blocks. I'm going to need to get this out of the hoop, get all the blocks separated, and trim. Let's talk about the trimming size. The blocks that are 2 by 4 trim to 2.5 by 4.5. Blocks that are 4 by 4 trim to 4.5 inches square. If you have the Orange Pop Ruler square set, you've got a 4.5 inch square. You can trim up these 3, and for the 2.5 by 4.5, follow the stitching lines on the outside, or if you happen to have a ruler, which I actually do, this came in some kind of box. It happens to be 2.5 by 4.5, so I can put that down, put this on a rotating cutting mat, and trim these. We've done plenty of trimming. I'm going to go ahead and do the trimming off camera, and then we're going to move on to the borders. We need to have a look at this and figure out the inner border. Let's take a look at the instructions for the inner borders. We're going to be cutting 2 inches wide, 18 inches long, 8 strips. And it tells us to cut these and sew them in pairs. 2 together is going to be 36. 4 strips that are 36 inches long. We have more than enough border coverage. Now it tells us to cut it, starch it, and add fusible. This is the starch I like to use. A light spray gives a nice crisp finish. You don't need a lot. To prep the border fabric, I starched it, I pressed it, I put the fusible on the back, and then I cut my strips. You join them end to end like it shows in the instruction, and then press so the seams are open. Here's the 4 strip sets. These are going to be our inner borders. Let's prep our outer borders and our binding, and then all the rest of our fabric will be ready. For the outer border fabric, if you look on page 7, block by block quilting, I need to cut 4 strips, 5 inches by width of fabric. The first thing I did was add fusible to the back of my fabric. I'm working with Pellon SF 101. It's 20 inches wide. We need 4 strips that are 5 inches wide. That's 20 inches. So I went ahead and fused 20 inches of the Pellon SF 101 on the back of my fabric, selvage to selvage. I've got my fusible on the back. I need to cut 4 5-inch wide strips that run the width of fabric. Width of fabric is about 42 inches. I don't have enough space for that, and I don't have a ruler that long. Here's how you can cut fabric that long. I'm going to take it and fold it in half, match the edges. This has a very nice clean edge, and I'm just going to finger press it. This is nice and straight, and this is nice and straight. The key to cutting a long piece of fabric without getting a wave to it is lining up along the top fold and the side. You have to be able to line up along both straight edges. I'm going to start by lining up my 5 right there, and then I'm going to slide this down. Make sure that's straight. That looks good. We need 4 of these. If you go to line up and you're finding maybe it's shifted a little bit, you want this to be straight, what I would do is line up my ruler along the top, and let's say it was crooked, and let's just pretend. And then you would trim off to get a straight edge, so you had a straight edge on both sides. I have 1 more I have to cut. See how that's nice and straight? Nice straight edge. If you don't line up the top and the side, your strip might look something like that. It'll have a little curve to it. These are going to be nice and straight. For your binding, you need 5 2.5-inch wide with the fabric strips. Spray starch it, iron it, make sure you've got the straight fold there, and fold it in half like we just did. See how this is uneven? You would want to even that up, make that straight. Cut your 5 strips. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. Here's my binding. My 2.5-inch strips are sewn edge to edge, folded in half, and pressed. going to set that aside. It's time to start on our borders. The border file we need is right down here. This is page 72, Inner Border Quilting Design. Let's go ahead and bring up the border files. The instructions tell us we need KDQ 531 border drink 1. Mine's labeled KDQ 530 border drink 1. Let's go ahead and bring that up. And we're looking at the 1-inch width file. It looks like bubbles. This is the correct file. My maximum hoop size is 14 inch. Let's bring up the 1x14. It's 13.71 inches long. We're working with approximately 36-inch long strips. This would be 3 hoopings. I'm just curious to see the next shortest one, which is the 12. The 12 is 11.75 inches long. Let's multiply that by 3. That gives me 35.25 inches worth of quilting. I'm going to go with this. Since this is 11.75 inches long, I can work with my 8x12 inch hoop. Let's hit set, edit. I'm going to grab it, slide it over. I'm going to use border duplicate. We need 4. I already have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to spread that out, center it, save this to your machine because we're going to do this 3 times. I do have some scrap batting strips. I think I'm going to do the same thing I did with the filler blocks. The first thing that's going to stitch out is our batting placement line. I've got the light mesh cutaway in my 8x12 hoop. The color that we're using is Tango. Let's go ahead and stitch out those batting placement lines. The placement lines are all stitched out. These are 1 inch wide. What I did was cut 4 sets of strips 1.5 inch by about 13. I am using some scrap batting and some batting that has odd edges, so I wanted to use that up. We'll go ahead and place these, cover the batting placement lines, and then we're going to tack them down. I went ahead and added a piece of tape to the top. Let's stitch our batting tack down lines. Tack down lines have stitched out. You want to trim away everything outside the tack down line. These are all trimmed. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the fabric placement line. Grab your 4 long strips and we're going to place these. We're going to start with the first one. You want to make sure you cover that fabric placement line. Go ahead and add a piece of tape at the top, and then I want to stretch it across the hoop and make sure that I'm covering that placement line. I'm going to lift it up and kind of just roll it. That looks good. When I get to the bottom, right here, I'm going to add another piece of tape. I'm going to smooth it one more time. I'm going to add a piece of tape to hold that there and make sure that stays in place. Going to get the next strip, do the same thing. These are all taped at the top and the bottom. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the fabric tack down lines. All the strips are tacked down. I went ahead and removed the tape from the top and the bottom. You may have seen my hands. Always keep your hands away from the needle when your machine is running. I was just making sure everything was lying nice and flat. These look great. The next thing we're going to do is stitch out the quilting. Our first set of stitch outs for these borders is done. We're going to take this over to the table. You want to get this out of the hoop and then we're going to separate the border strips. We want to get rid of any extra stabilizer. I'm going to cut away the stabilizer here at the top and then the stabilizer at the bottom. We're going to set up another set of borders and we're going to join the borders. So you want to get rid of this extra stabilizer here. Be careful not to cut your border strips. I like to use the ruler like that to protect my fabric to make sure I don't cut those strips. So we've cut away the excess at the top and at the bottom. Now all I need to do is separate the strips. I've got my 4 border strips and I've reloaded my hoop with some stabilizer. I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to stitch out the batting placement, place my batting, tack it down, trim it, stitch out the fabric placement, and then I'll bring it back here and I'll show you how to line up your borders. It's exactly the same steps we just did, so I'm not going to film that. I've got my next set of batting strips ready. I have my fabric placement lines all stitched out. You're going to use these lines to help match up with the first set of strips. You want to take your first strip, the quilted part here at the top of your hoop. Going to fold this up, and there's different ways you can do this. I like to look at all the stitching lines here on the back and kind of roll it down, get everything to match, and then you want this top line here to match with this top line here, and then you can also use the lines here and here, here and here, and even your batting tack down lines. You can see them really well because we're using this pink colored thread. Gives you a good number of checks to make sure everything's lining up. Try to get everything to match as close as possible, and then we're going to tape it into place, and then when we get to the machine you can hand crank your needle and check and see how well you did. I will tell you from experience, if you don't get it exactly to match, you are never going to know in your quilt. It won't make a difference. I'm going to add some tape right there. I'm going to go straight down and add tape at the bottom, and then do the next one the same way. I've got everything taped into place. I'm going to pick this up very carefully and take it over to my machine and slide that on. The next step is our fabric tack down line. I like to hand crank my needle and check, shift it just a little bit. You may have to adjust your tape. Going to hand crank again. That's good. I'm hitting that thread. That is exactly where I want that to be. Going to stitch the fabric tack down for this one, and then when it goes to the next one, I'm going to stop my machine, make sure there's no tape in the way, and see how I did with my placement. I matched that up really good. That looks good. Let's look at our second strip. Go ahead and repeat the process for all your strips. Hand cranking the needle usually gets everything to line up exactly and results in the flawless edge-to-edge look. For some reason with this design on the inner border, I ended up with quilting that overlapped. I tried spacing it out a little bit. I couldn't get it quite right. When I went and did the outer borders, everything lined up flawlessly, and I used the exact same process. You'll see that in a little bit. Let's go ahead and run the quilting, and then I'll do the last part off camera. It looks like here they ended up overlapping a bit, so when the quilting ended here with a bubble, the next bubble overlaps it. I'm going to do the last part of these off camera. I finished the final stitch out. On my first border strip over here, I left a gap in the stitching, and I got a gap in my quilting. The rest I tried to line up. Quilting overlap, the quilting overlap. Here I have a slight gap in the stitching, probably a 1/16 of an inch. It's very small, and here the quilting barely overlap. I'm not very concerned. The thread blends with the fabric. You're not going to see it. Let's go ahead and bring up our border files for the outer border. It's the same border file, just larger. We need the border drink 1 4-inch width. Border drink 1, and let's look for 4-inch width. 4x7, 4x10, 4x12, and 4x14. We've got 4 strips that are about 42 inches long. I'm just going to bring up the 4x14. I'm going to take that and look at, that's exactly 14 inches. So with the fabric is about 42 inches. 42 divided by 14 is exactly 3. So I can do this in 3 hoopings, but these are wide. I think I can probably only do 1 at a time. Let's look. I don't even think I can add a second one. I can. Ooh, I can even get a little bit of space. I can do 2 at the same time. That's good. I thought this was going to take forever. These are going to be done in the color Clover. They're done exactly the same way. Now we've got 4 really long strips because these are the outer borders. I am going to do all of this off camera. Let's hit OK and embroidery and have a look at this. It says 15 minutes per section. Now that is just the stitching. So remember, you have to place and trim your batting. You'll be lining up your fabric. You'll be doing the continuous border. It's going to take a little bit longer. While I'm stitching out the outer borders, I'm going to start laying out and piecing together the quilt top. let's go over to the table and start putting our quilt together. You can kind of see I've already started some piles. In your instructions on page 73 and on page 74, we've got our quilt layout. It gives you the layout of all of the blocks. So we've got a section 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it shows you how to put the whole quilt together. There's some tips up top. It tells you to press the seams as you go. Use a pressing cloth. You don't want to melt any of your embroidery, any kind of vinyl, embroidery leather, anything like that. Seam allowances are not shown in the diagram. This is just a picture of what it's going to look like. Pay attention to directional quilting on your filler blocks, and we're going to press our seams open. I went ahead and laid all the sections out. So we've got section 1, section 2, section 3, and then over here I have section 4. There are a couple things you want to watch out for as you're laying them out. Some of your filler blocks, like this block 2, they have directional quilting, so make sure you're putting them in straight, especially like the squares, that you don't accidentally put it sideways when you have a basket. You want that to point the right direction. With blocks like this, the pinwheel, although it looks the same, when you turn it, the quilting is running across, so make sure you get that like this in your quilt instead of like that. And honestly, if you sew it in like that, my guess is nobody's going to notice it, but try to make sure you get your directional blocks placed correctly. The order for sewing everything is listed underneath each one of the diagrams. It's kind of intuitive, and you can tell that you've got to sew these two together before you can attach it to this block, otherwise it won't work. I'm going to go ahead and do all of this off camera and get the whole top piece, and then we'll pick up and we'll talk about measuring, and we'll trim and attach our borders. I've got the quilt top sewn together. Before we measure it, we need to trim our borders, so we'll be ready to attach our borders. These borders match together seamlessly. I matched them up the same way I did these, where I did the hand crank with the needle and matched this up. And wow, it is really hard to tell where one ends and another begins. I actually have to flip it to the back. See how nice that is? These matched up really good. Let's trim one of each. I'll talk about methods of trimming. The inner border is a 1-inch finish border. If you look at this from the front, you'll see you've got 2 lines of stitching on the sides. If you measure that, it's 1 1/4. You need 1 1/2. So you do not want to trim on these lines. There's 2 things you can do. You can trim 1/8 of an inch outside the line, or my favorite, turn it around to the back, and you'll see this line of stitching right here. That's your fabric placement line. See how nothing is attached to it? See the stitching? If you measure that, it's 1 1/2 inches. That's where you want to trim. And now it's going to be the same on the larger border. The larger border is going to be the same. This is a 4-inch finished border once it's sewn in. If you measure between the 2 lines of stitching, you're at 4 1/4. Same thing. Flip it to the back. Look for the 2 outside stitch lines, and you're going to have 4 1/2 and 4 1/2. For both borders, I recommend trimming from the back. I find it easier. And line that up. And I'm going to trim. And then what I do is I go all the way up. So pull this toward me. Line up part that's already cut, and then line up on that stitching line. Make sure this is nice and straight and flat. You don't want it curved. That looks good. So I'll just go part way. Then you'll do the other side. We want 1 1/2 inches because it's 1 inch finished. I've got my nice clean edge here. I have a 1 1/2 mark, and when I put that down on the clean edge, I should be right on that stitching line. Here's the stitching line. Feels like I did a good job. Make sure that's lined up. 1 1/2. And then you go all the way to the end. I'm going to go ahead and trim all my inner borders and my outer borders. Here's my quilt. It's all pieced together. I have everything pressed open. I wanted to show that from the back so you could see what that looks like. Let's flip this to the front. It tells us to go ahead and measure. I like to measure down the middle. It's 30 inches. And I measured the middle here. This is also 30 inches. You can also measure edges. That's also 30. These usually come out really nice and square. Because we've built this block by block on the embroidery machine, We've used our orange pop rulers. We've trimmed everything to exact sizes. It's probably going to come out 30 inches square. If you've got 30 inches here, we're going to be adding 1-inch borders, so that'll be 31, 32, and then you're going to have 4 more inches, 36, 4 inches over on the other side, 40. And it says it's a 40-inch quilt. So if you're measuring 30 inches square, you're right where you need to be. Let me show you how I attach the borders. The instructions tell you to trim the borders to the measurement. Since I know all the sides of my quilt are 30 inches square, I don't have to do that. The borders should be longer than your quilt. What I like to do is attach the borders and press. We'll press them open because we're going to be doing stitch in the ditch for this. And then after they're attached and pressed, I'll trim off the extra. You want to start with the side borders. Go ahead and pin or clip, sew with a 1/4 inch seam, and then press those open. I'll do that and bring that back and show you what it looks like. Here it is with the side borders sewn on. Let me actually turn this. And we're going to trim away the excess border. I'm going to line up a line on my ruler along this seam to make sure I cut this straight, and then line up the edge of my ruler right here. Cut that. Now it's nice and straight. I'm going to do that to the other 3 edges, and then I'm going to add the top and the bottom border the same way. I've got all the inner borders attached. Something you should do, measure it again, make sure everything's straight. If it's not even, square it up. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get it done at this point. We're going to put on the outer borders. These are directional because they've got the soda bottles. They have an up and a down. You have to decide how you want to have these on your quilt. Top and bottom, I think, is pretty easy. We're going to do those with the bottle pointing up. For the sides, do you want the bottle top pointing in or the bottle top pointing out? I'll decide what I want to do with that, and I'm going to go ahead and attach the side borders, trim, attach the top and borders, trim, and then we'll talk about our backing, binding, and embellishments. All the borders are on. The bottom border, I have the bottles going up, and that's also how the top border is. And the side borders, I have the bottles pointing in. I need to make my backing. I'm going to be using a bolt. This quilt is 40 inches square. Off the bolt, here's my selvage here, the selvage there. I'm not going to have to piece this at all. All I want to do is give myself a little bit extra here and unroll. I'm going to make it slightly larger than the quilt, and I'll be ready to go. I've got my big piece of fabric cut for the backing and my 505 spray. The 505 spray doesn't really stick well to stabilizer, but we've pressed the seams open, so it'll stick to the seams. I'm going to go ahead and spray the back of this, lay out the fabric, and press it down. I've got that sprayed down. Let's talk about using stitch in the ditch to attach your backing. What I like to do is start somewhere in the middle, and to attach the backing, we're going to do stitch in the ditch. Some people like to add extra batting. I don't like to do that. I'll take this over to my machine, and I'll probably start here. And so right here, this is a nice long seam in the middle, and this is a good seam as well. And you just sew on all the seams around all the blocks and the borders. I'm going to do that off camera, but I have shown that close up in another video before. I'll link that below in case you're unfamiliar with stitch in the ditch. All it means is sewing right on that seam line. Do the best you can. Sometimes it goes on one side, sometimes it goes on the other, but that's going to anchor your backing to your quilt top. Here's the back of the quilt. You can see all the little lines for the stitch in the ditch all the way around both sides of the short borders. I don't tack down the outside. I'm going to catch that with my binding. One of the things I did at the very end was add some stitch in the ditch along the grass blocks because they were sort of puffing up. Let's go ahead and flip this over and have a look at the front. Overall, it's looking good. Here's a couple of things I noticed. This was the block that I forgot to slide down. So underneath the grass, I have a little blue. I'm just going to say it's lake adjacent. It looks great. Not worried about it. Let's go ahead and pull these down and look at our baskets. If you remember, I centered the baskets a little bit differently. I left a space because I didn't want this decorative stitching to get caught in the seam like that and be completely obliterated. I could have done a little bit better getting this a little bit closer to the grass. I think it looks fine. The only people who are going to know are people who did this quilt. I think it looks great. Let me slide over and you can see this one. I will say stitch in the ditch is not my strong suit. There are places that are what I call ditch adjacent. I can see the white thread right there on the white. I didn't quite get it inside. I can see a little thread here. Unless you're looking for things like that, you're never going to notice it. What I need to do now is trim away the extra yellow, add my binding, and add my label, and then we can work on the fun part, which is embellishments. I'm going to link a video below for you, which shows how to add a label at the same time you add your quilt binding. I've got the binding on, it's time to attach the embellishments, and then we're done. In your embellishment kits, you'll find the Sippin On Sunshine quilt buttons, there's a bow, and then we made the pennant banner. I'm going to go ahead and attach them all with my glue gun. I'm using this SureBonder Cool Shot glue gun. It is a hot glue gun. It doesn't get as hot as my SureBonder high temperature glue gun, which can really burn your fingers. So this is perfect for what we're doing today. The instructions are on page 75 and 76. We're going to start with our butterfly button. It does say to hand sew these, but I like using the glue gun. It goes on the sky block and it shows it kind of like that with the trail coming out from the wing. What I like to do with the glue gun is get the glue covering the little holes, and then when you press it down, the glue comes up out of the holes and it'll form a little round bead, and that helps hold it into place. But if you don't like seeing the glue on the top, you can wipe it off. It's still going to hold it into place. I used the glue gun for a couple quilts and I haven't had anything fall off yet. Got the glue on there. I'm going to place that. That looks good. I'm going to push it down. You can see the glue coming out through the holes. Looks like a couple of clear beads. I was going to leave it and let it cool, but I got it on my finger. So we'll go ahead and we'll just kind of pull that out of the way. Get rid of the glue string. There we go. I'm going to push it down. I've still got two little like glue beads coming out, and then you can let it cool and it'll be good to go. Here's a close-up. You can see how the glue sort of rounds out. It looks like a little bead. I need to pull away a little bit of a glue string, and this one's good to go. Let's go on to the next one. Since I've got the camera right here, I'm going to attach the dimensional bow. It goes on the sun hat. Shows it like that. Up to you if you want to angle it, have it straight. I think like that looks good. Now I'm going to put the glue on the back of the ribbon. This Cool Shot glue gun is designed to be used on delicate items like paper, lace, felt without burning the item. That looks good. Let's push that down. That looks good. It looks like the next thing on the top of the quilt is our pennant banner. That's right over here. Let's slide this down. We need our lemon and the bottle tops right here. You can look at the picture here in the instructions. It's not necessarily anchored to anything. I also grabbed this. You can kind of see where they placed it. Probably like right here and right there. Make sure it looks balanced. Like you don't want it way too far over into this block. You've got some blank space here. You can fill that up and make it look balanced. I'm going to add some glue to the back. I'm going to add it all along the little rope and then the bow. That looks good. Now it does say to hand tack it down. So if you're not using a glue gun, you could hand tack the edges down. This is just so much easier for me. This part is not glued, so it does come up off the quilt. The only part I glued is the rope. That looks good. Right up next to the pennant is the Sippin On Sunshine block. We have our little red flower button. They show it like this with the larger round petals up near the top, right about there. Some glue on the back of that, and then we'll glue that down. I just noticed I have two jump threads right there I need to trim. Jump threads are trimmed, button is on. Let's move down to our baskets. We've got a blue button and an orange button, flower buttons. We have basket 1 and basket 2. The blue button, again, they show it with the larger petals on top, goes right here where this is sort of a short petal. Looks like that on the photo. And then we have an orange button, and they have this orientation. So the 2 petals at the top and the 1 at the bottom. And that goes right there. That one's easy to place because you've got that little line of stitching. Let me go ahead and glue those on. Our last button is the sunglasses. Right about there on the picnic blanket. All right, glue. Let's get that on. Right about there. All the embellishments are on. It's all done. I'm going to put the camera on the handheld tripod. We're going to go in and get some close-ups of this. Let's start down here. We've got our Life is a Picnic. We have our dimensional felt bows going over here. Here's where I messed up the thread color, but I like it better with the orange juice. It looks really good. We've got some dimensional leaves here on the strawberry, watermelon. There's our sunglasses. I remember I messed up the fringe color on that. That was supposed to be bright yellow, but I love the way that looks. We already talked about that. This is lakeside living right there. Our beautiful baskets. They came out great. Let's go ahead and go over this way. We have our little felt flags over here. The flower blocks went together pretty good. Everything matches up. Here's our dimensional dragonfly, filler block pinwheel, the fluffy felt bird. It's felted micro velvet. I think we have a combination there. The woven embroidery leather hat with the dimensional bow, butterfly, the Sippin On Sunshine, our pennant banner we just put on. We've got our nice shiny vinyl grapes and the shiny bottles. Really cute. Came out so good. Let me show you where I think I'm going to put this. Big blank wall. I think I need to get some quilt hangers. Start hanging some stuff up over here. What do you think? I think it would look great right there. Let me know. Drop a comment below. That's it. That was video number 9. We are all done. This schedule is still available on my website. If you've just seen these videos and you want to work on it, you can download this schedule for free. It's a great way to break up the project and keep track of everything. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. There's lots more Kimberbell fun coming your way. Any comments or questions? Leave them below. All the products are linked below. As a Kimberbell affiliate, I get a small commission if you use my links, but more importantly, it lets Kimberbell know people are watching and enjoying my content. Thanks for making this feature quilt with me. I'll see you next time.